Tonight, a 46-year-old man in Assiniboia is facing charges of child pornography and sexual assault. Also, in an effort to combat significant wait times, the province is sending people who are on an urgent wait list for breast cancer diagnosis to a private medical facility in Calgary. Plus, a notorious Saskatoon motel partially reopens with a new name, new owners, and a promise for improvement.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Wednesday, November 29th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Good evening and thank you for watching. A 46-year-old man living in Assiniboia is facing 13 charges related to sexual offenses against children, including sexual assaults and possessing child pornography. He's also accused of secretly recording children in the bathroom of his family's home-based daycare. Jesse Anton has more.
RCMP say the investigation began earlier this month when they received a report about a historic sexual assault. That led officers to execute a search warrant at Richard Dyke's home here in Assiniboia. Investigators say a daycare was also run out of the house, and RCMP say the victims are 3 boys and they were all under the age of 12 at the time of the alleged assaults. Court documents show the assaults allegedly happened between 2014 and 2021 in several southern Saskatchewan communities, including Swift Current and Moose Jaw. Dyke's 13 charges include 3 counts each of sexual assault, sexual interference, and making sexually explicit material available to someone under 16, plus 2 counts of invitation to sexual touching. Dyke is also charged with voyeurism and possessing child pornography. Information contained in the court document suggests he videotaped children in the bathroom of his wife's daycare in Assiniboia for the past year and a half. And before that, he allegedly recorded children in the bathroom who were under his wife's care in their home in Cornack and Swift Current for up to 7 years. Advocates say having charges laid in cases like this can bring up a lot of emotions for victims and their loved ones.
It's really important to remind all of us that kids are not to blame, their parents are not to blame when these things happen, that it's really important that we seek help, that if you suspect child abuse that as an adult, you have a legal duty to report it in a timely way, ensure the protection of that child, but also the other children who could be vulnerable to the perpetrator.
That's the message I think that needs to be heard, is that this is not contained within a certain demographic or a certain community or a certain group of people. It is experienced by many people across the spectrum in our communities, and it has got such profound impacts on our community's well-being.
Education Minister Jeremy Cockrell says he's deeply concerned about these allegations. In a statement, Cockrell said after hearing about the charges, the province took immediate action by putting a hold on the license of that home daycare in Assiniboia. He also said the Ministry of Education will help affected families find new childcare arrangements and pointed them to police-based victim services. Dyke made his first appearance in Moose Jaw Provincial Court on Wednesday, and he's set to remain in custody until he appears again for his bail hearing next month. Jesse Anton, CBC News, Assiniboia.
The Saskatchewan government is sending roughly 1,000 patients to Calgary for breast cancer diagnostic procedures. Patients deemed high risk are being treated in Saskatchewan, but those deemed as urgent risk will receive care at a private clinic in Calgary. Those awaiting mammograms and biopsies have lobbied the government for action in recent weeks because of delays and long wait lists here. The health minister says the government is spending $2 million to pay for the procedures and another $1.5 million to cover travel costs.
Eventually, there's a wait list of about 350, and ideally the wait list should be roughly 3 weeks, and I think we're seeing upwards of 10 weeks, if not more, for some women. So that is this is a short-term solution to be able to cut this wait list down, provide women with these options to travel to Calgary to get this done, and to eliminate that wait list and make sure that we're on top of additional cases as they come in.
Hindley says the backlog is due in part to a shortage of specialized radiologists at the Breast Assessment Centre in Regina. The opposition says there were 10,000 fewer mammograms in Saskatchewan last year than in 2017. Leader Carla Beck says sending patients out of province is shocking. Meanwhile, radiology technicians from the Pasqua Hospital were guests of the opposition at the legislature this morning. They say shortages in their field delay both diagnosis and care. Their union also says techs are leaving for higher salaries and better working conditions in other provinces.
We need help with recruitment. If you open the door for people to come in, you recruit people to the province, you don't do anything to retain them, you're just opening the door to come and then open the back door to leave. We want people to be trained and stay in this province. We want higher compensation so our folks can stay here. We want the government to provide more seats in educational seats for those people to be trained so they can stay in this province.
The health minister says the government is committed to creating training seats and wants to remain competitive on wages with other neighboring provinces. The Saskatchewan Health Authority says it needs more volunteers in rural and small communities. Its biggest need? Meals on Wheels volunteers, particularly in Lloydminster, Meadow Lake, Swift Current, Tisdale, Estevan, Weyburn and Craik. The SHA is hoping to hit 50 volunteers total for all of those communities. Volunteers are also needed to help welcome newcomers in rural communities who are joining the healthcare workforce. The SHA says volunteers play a critical role in helping integrate new staff coming in from the Philippines.
In these rural areas, we've had some immense commitment from volunteers who, may pick up some of the new workers from the airport, drive them to their new communities, show them around town, connect them with others in their community, so they really have a sense of home and belonging here in Saskatchewan.
The SHA says time commitments for both Meals on Wheels and the Filipino Welcoming Initiative can vary and be flexible. The authority is encouraging anyone 16 years and older to lend a hand if they're able to. Saskatoon City Council entered its second day of budget debate. It made no cuts on Tuesday, even though councillors are desperate to reduce what could be a significant property tax increase. The first cut came today, decreasing capital contributions to the city's reserve by 3%, except for Saskatoon fire and roadway preservation. It equals about $1.3 million. Some councillors said they would rather go line by line than broadly cut to reserves. The motion narrowly passed 6-5.
We've been at this a day and a half. We've made zero progress. So I'm going to be suggesting some things that are tough, and I'm actually going to be suggesting some things I don't like. But you know what? I've had to do that in my own personal budget over the past several years as well. There's things I've had to go without. There's decisions I've had to make. There's things I've had to put off. And we just cannot keep spending the way we are.
Ward 7's councillor raised a motion to shift the weight of the property tax away from residents and onto businesses, but that motion was defeated. The city's potential property tax increase is at 6.65% for 2024, leading into its final day of deliberations tomorrow. The new owners of a notorious motel in Saskatoon want a fresh start. The fire department shut down the City Centre Inn and Suites 3 years ago. Now it's reopening with a new name and new focus. Teresa Kleem brings us an update on what's changed.
Welcome to Midtown Inn. This place was shut down 3 years ago. Today we have transformed it to a new life, to a refreshing place. Everyone is welcome to
new owners, a new name, new rules and renovations. So this is it, 170. The last time we took our CBC camera into room 170 was July 2020.
And this is kind of like your kitchen area.
The fire department had shut down the City Centre Inn and Suites after finding more than 60 health and safety violations. There was raw sewage on bathroom floors, bugs coming out of every opening, and trash turning rooms into fire traps. That's on top of all the crime at the Notorious Motel. More than 100 residents were evicted.
It'd be an understatement to call it deplorable. It had mice infestation.
Assistant Fire Chief Yvonne Raymer says the new owners reached out and met with the fire department to fix the problems.
The portions that have actually been opened have been completely brought back up to minimum standard.
This is our premium unit. Everything here is basically brand new.
Gerald Karain-Perumble is marketing to budget-savvy folks, including students and workers. He's keen to run this motel by the book, and besides giving it a facelift, he's also added security and eliminated cash payments. He says his employees have already had to turn people away.
In the middle of the night, someone showed up at the gate and said to my staff, "I'm going to give you $1,000 cash as a tip. And then damage deposit whatsoever you want. Just give me a place." Okay, he denied. He said no cash. That goes, a long way for people to understand we have policies in place and we're not going to break because there's certain money involved in it.
And while the motel is trying to cater to a different clientele, there are still concerns in the neighborhood about crime, poverty and homelessness. Frontline workers say some of the motel's previous residents are still homeless.
It was a kickoff point where that closed, then the Lighthouse closed, the Prairie Heights Tower closed, and now we're where we are because nothing has been put in place to replace any of it.
The Midtown Inn partially opened at the end of September. It's working to reopen all 185 rooms. Teresa Klim, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Regina residents will have to wait on a decision about expanding the city's accessible taxi program. A report presented to the city's executive committee this afternoon recommended the creation of a city-operated dispatch service that would help the city make sure the accessible service was actually meeting the demands of those who need it. Each ride would have a 25-cent charge, which would help pay for the dispatch service and provide incentives to taxi drivers. Advocates and accessible taxi users say the program is needed more than ever.
It's important for people with disability to have another option if paratransit overloaded and you have to be transferred trips onto the taxis and you can't use them for a certain amount of hours because the company told you not to. So it makes it hard.
Executive committee referred the report back to city administration as they look for information and data before making a decision. That should come back by March. There are currently 8 accessible taxis operating in Regina, and under the proposed expanded program, there could be as many as 18. It's the 25th year of the CPKC holiday train traveling across North America, collecting money and food items and raising awareness for food banks. It's raised more than $22 million and 2 million kilograms of food over that time. Keep your eyes out. The train will be traveling across Canada through to December 19th. It'll be in Bredenbury, Yorkton, Foam Lake, Wynyard, Saskatoon on December 5th. Wilkie and Macklin on December 6th, and North Portal, Estevan, and Weyburn on December 17th. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. The federal government has reached a multi-million-dollar deal with Google after months of the web giant threatening to pull Canadian news off of its search engine. It's in response to a new law that requires major digital platforms to pay Canadian news outlets for linking to their content. Kate McKenna has the details.
After months of threats from Google to pull Canadian news content from the search engine, a deal.
This is a deal, an agreement that is going to resonate around the world as countries and democracies struggling with the same challenges that our media landscape in Canada is facing with are going to look at this, and we're very pleased we were there.
The federal government says Google will pay about $100 million per year to Canadian news organizations, a compensation for linking to original journalism. That's less than what the government wanted, but welcome news for an industry that needs those clicks.
Google creates our information environment. It sounds like I'm overstating this, but you want to know something, you put in a Google search.
This announcement comes after the government passed a new law forcing web giants to pay to link to Canadian news content.
I think the government was looking for some way to salvage what had been a real mess. There was, I think, some amount of desperation on the part of both the government and the industry to find some deal.
The government calls this deal a win, But Meta, the parent company of Instagram and Facebook, has already blocked Canadian news links from their platforms.
Unfortunately, Meta continues to completely abdicate any responsibility towards democratic institutions and even stability, but we're going to continue to work positively in those areas.
But there are still questions of how Google's money will be doled out and who will be eligible, including the CBC. The agreement allows Google to work directly with one group that will represent all media, but the details of how that will work won't be released until next month. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
The weather update is brought to you by Capital Ford Lincoln. 2023 model clearout is on now.
We just missed a really beautiful sunset. A live look now at Regina, where we had another really nice sunny day. It's currently still 1 degree in the Queen City. Aishwarya Duda joins me now with a look at your forecast.
Another gorgeous day in Saskatchewan. Temperatures continue to stay warm and above seasonal for most of us. Let's take a look at the current conditions. A bit cool in the north, Collins Bay at -18, Stony Rapids at -16. In south and central, we actually went up to 6 degrees, 5 degrees in some regions. Right now, we're all basically sitting right above that freezing mark at 1 degree. And getting into tomorrow, we'll see a bit of a cool off as we see that mix of green and blue will be closer to seasonal. South and central will be around -3, -4 degrees. And then getting into Friday, we'll see a bit of a drop as the map there turns blue. Temperatures will be around -10. In terms of those winds, staying pretty steady and breezy, around 30-35 kilometers an hour in much of the province, mostly coming in from the northwest, a bit windier around La Loche and Lloydminster. Now, a small system is bringing some flurries in Prince Albert, Hudson Bay, some light snow over La Ronge, and of course in the north, where we've been seeing most of that accumulating snowfall past few days. That system quickly rolls out of the province, leaving behind some flurries overnight in Yorkton, Humboldt area. And then we're mostly blanketed with this cloud cover over the weekend. That'll also help to keep things slightly warm as we get into Saturday. Now, we're seeing this unseasonal warmth because the jet stream is much closer to us, and you'll see that in the upper atmosphere here. It's something that happens during an El Nino winter, which is what we're in right now. The last time this phenomena happened was in 2016, and you can see that in the model, the trough in the blue continues to stay north of us while the ridge down south keeping things nice and warm. And we'll see that in the temperatures for your forecast. Regina, tomorrow the temperature will be -3 for daytime highs. That northwestern winds continue to stay light, and getting into the weekend we'll see a bit of a drop before things come back up on Monday, going up to 1 degree and a chance of flurries, and then even going up to 4 degrees on Wednesday. Saskatoon as well, those northwestern winds stick around until Friday, and then we see some sunshine on the weekend as the temperatures drop closer to seasonal. On Monday there's that chance of some light snow or flurries. Getting into next week, temperatures go back up to above seasonal. So Sam, no significant weather events or conditions. Temperatures pretty much staying close to or just above normal for the most part.
All right, thanks Aishwarya. This kayaker has set a new bar with a 20-meter drop off a glacier in the Arctic Circle off Norway. It's the biggest ever recorded descent off a glacier waterfall. The 32-year-old from Catalan toured through the Glacial River before making the plunge. The crew had to climb the ice cap and then walk 11 kilometers to access the river. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. Talks are ongoing in an effort to extend the current truce between Israel and Hamas as hostages and detainee exchanges continue. Another dozen hostages were released from Gaza today. They were taken to Egypt through the Rafah border, crossing with the territory. They'll be taken to hospital for exams and reunited with their families. In exchange, Israel will free 30 Palestinian detainees. The ceasefire between Israel and Hamas is set to expire Thursday. Israel says it will extend the truce as long as Hamas continues to release hostages. Meanwhile, in Regina today, a handful of protesters were arrested as pro-Palestinian protesters blocked the CN rail line near downtown. The group set up a blockade near Albert Street and Saskatchewan Drive.
Down, down with occupation! Down, down with occupation! Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine!
A member of the group told CBC News that the blockade was meant to pressure the Canadian government to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. Their goal was to stop the movement of goods in Canada until a ceasefire is called. About 8 protesters set up a blockade on the rail tracks. Regina police say the rail line is the jurisdiction of CP Rail Police, so any arrests and tickets were issued by CP under the Railway Safety Act. But in a statement, CP says it doesn't have any information about charges. No one was taken into RPS custody. About 24 activists gathered nearby. We're told local protesters will continue to pressure the government until a ceasefire is called.
A bit cloudy in Regina tonight. Temperature will be -3 at midnight. Those northwestern winds continue to stay steady at about 30 kilometers an hour, but they do die down into the morning. By 8 a.m., temperatures will be dropping to -6, and it'll stay partly cloudy as we get towards the noon hour. Temperatures will rise to -4, and those northwestern winds get a bit calm to 20 kilometers an hour by the noon hour. Saskatoon as well, a bit cloudy tonight. Temperatures -5 at midnight. Northwestern winds staying pretty light and turning into actually western winds by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. A few clouds here and there. Temperature will be -8, and by the noon hour will actually rise up to -5. Some sunshine for Saskatoon through the rest of the day. Those western winds continue to stay light for Saskatoon.
All right, thanks, Aishwarya. And before we leave you tonight, a new server at a Regina restaurant is turning heads. He can play music and serve multiple trays at a time without dropping anything. But this staffer is no human. He's a robot named Wally. We stopped by Newtown Restaurant to get served the details.
Your delicious meal is here. Please take the dishes on the second tray.
运到前台
It's served at most 4 tables in front, and the service, the only thing the servers need to do is just put it on the table.
把这个餐放到桌子上就可以，帮我们就是前面。
It could save a lot of time from the back to the front line because there are a long way from the back to the front.
走廊非常的长，这个机器人它的
They reduce the capacity of the service, so the service have more time to know what are other demands or other needs the customer really need.
客人其他的需求。
Please take the dish. Here you go. You can enjoy your meal.
What do you think of the machine?
我觉得
很方便呀。
It's very convenient. 而且 convenient, very very convenient.
而且特别是像我们有孩子的家庭，它可以增加这个吃饭过程的乐趣。
Especially for the family who has the kids, it will bring a lot of happiness, to the dinner.
他就是提前就是
He need to know the map of this restaurant, so he is very familiar even to each corner, so he know which dishes to which table.
走过去送餐，他会说
He could say some funny things such as I'm very smart, I'm working now.
去送餐。
Select the corresponding table number after the dishes are placed on the tray.
And that's it for us tonight. For news anytime, you can head to cbc.ca/sask, subscribe to the CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel, or download the CBC News app. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.